In the occult, the smiley face has a darker, esoteric meaning. It's the notion that the universe itself is a big, practical joke. Therefore, one's life and one's relationship to others can be seen as one cosmic joke.
David Bowie and the director Johann Rank leave a remarkable Easter egg or hidden symbol at the very beginning of the video of Black Star. The astronaut representing David Bowie is wearing a smiley face.
NASA and Montana State University are ready to send loads of bacteria into the stratosphere. But don't worry, it's all for science. Teams across the U.S. will release about 100 balloons during the August 21st total solar eclipse. Some of those balloons will also carry samples of a highly resistant bacteria.
Chow time!
It's time.
Floyd, step up the door!
Floyd, step up the door!
Only my friends call me Floyd. Floyd.
You ain't got no friends, Floyd.
One day, somehow, some way, I'm gonna get out of here, and I'm gonna rain down on you like the Holy Ghost.
Man, you just threatened a staff member.
Yeah?
Yeah, you have.
Do something.
Let's have some fun.
What I want to know is, what started all of this?
What that man has in the bus is infectious, and all of us will have it.
The pictures up on your screen now of the 3rd precinct, which is on
fire.
Molotov cocktail and set the goddamn place on fire.
This is it.
This is the police precinct!
Surrounding the place. Goddamn siege.
Also see that fire alarm going off. Now we know that there were officers in there not too long ago, so we're not sure of the status of how many officers are still inside or if they have evacuated yet.
They must have assumed we called for backup.
I'm having a little problem here. The phones aren't working.
Sure, they cut the wires.
Storm could have taken the phones out.
They cut the wires. Just try the radios. Forget it. Frequencies are blocked. If the frequencies are blocked, that's not easy to do. Well, they must have got professional help then, because all the frequencies are blocked.
Floyd allegedly tried to use a fake $20 bill.
Use a fake $20 bill.
Yeah, he specializes in
Counterfeit merchandise. Fake $20 bill. Counterfeit merchandise.
yeah. Fake Rolex. He's the man.
Who the fuck is Smiley? I'm Smiley. Me, I'm Smiley. His name's Smiley.
The Purge election year from writer-director James DeMonaco, and this is the third in the Purge trilogy.
Every year, they do a 12-hour period where all crime, including murder, is legal. All emergency services are suspended, and people can do whatever they want for this 12-hour period. The very first Purge film stars Ethan Hawke. The Purge happens on the same date every year. Those dates are March 21st into March 22nd. 322 for Scott's number. And again, there's a lot of initiation and a lot of that symbolism in these movies.
New York City is set to release around 300 elder, nonviolent prisoners from Rikers Island as the coronavirus pandemic continues. Inmates with less than a year on their sentences will be released immediately. Business Insider reports that 300 Rikers Island inmates are expected to leave the jail as a result, with 75 prisoners already released.
One of the scenes that sort of plays out throughout the film is a black shop owner who's obviously owned the convenience store on the block for a long, long time. Young, thuggish black girls come in and starting to kind of beat the place up and start to shoplift. This shop owner, he said, hope can lead to a lot of letdown. Using the language of Obama and the Obama years, as we sort of see the letdown and people feeling like they're now sort of justified.
Telling people to stay calm. Do not travel unless you absolutely have to. Keep children, the elderly, and the most vulnerable at home. We have a vaccine.
I experimented on him. I was trying to inhibit violence. I needed a human subject. He was all I had.
See what he did to you.
Russian flu has the potential to kill millions.
As of today, we are making the vaccine, and this will happen at an unprecedented pace.
On the 16th of November, V-Day. It means us waiting a few months for the vaccine, so that they don't have to wait decades. Isn't that worth it? Support V-Day.
Say no, not this time.
This time, we live together.
We live together. We live together.
Smile, though your heart is breaking.
Smile, though your heart is aching.
Smile, even though it's aching.
Now is the time for a great reset. This, written by Klaus Schwab, executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, and of course a Bilderberger who was even on their steering committee at one point. He writes, quote, "We need a great reset of capitalism." The Great Reset agenda would have three main components. The first would steer the market toward fairer outcomes. Depending on the country, these may include changes to wealth taxes, the withdrawal of fossil fuel subsidies, and new rules governing intellectual property, trade, and competition.
We're looking at a future that combines communism with fascism. And this is just a high-level view. There's tons of spokes on this wheel that I'm not going to get into. And I encourage you while you're listening to imagine things like vaccines and why they're so insistent that the entire world needs to be vaccinated. That's what this is all about. The fourth industrial revolution combines this thing called modern monetary theory with the circular economy, the Internet of Things, blockchain, intellectual property, genetic engineering, and finally, augmented and virtual reality. It sounds crazy, but let me present my case.
A 2010 book by a guy named Richard Florida, Dick Florida, The Great Reset, How New Ways of Living and Working Drive Post-Crash Prosperity. He runs theatlantic.com.
Circular economy means that private ownership is completely abolished. You won't own anything. Ever. It's all leased.
Here's an idea. What if you never had to buy a light bulb again? Instead, you lease light, like you lease a car or an apartment. It's just one idea that's part of the circular economy.
Instead of buying bulbs, this office in London leases its light from Philips Lighting. It signed a 15-year lease for the service and pays a fee each quarter. Philips still owns the actual light bulbs and provides maintenance and replacements when needed, no extra cost. This model gives Philips the incentive to produce energy-efficient light bulbs, and it saves the office money with fixed lighting costs. It's a radically different business model that makes companies more like service providers than sellers of a physical product. And it turns out lots of companies are looking for ways to get involved.
Changing people's mindsets is another. And that's what it'll take for the circular economy to go from an idea to reality for everyone.
Here's Kate Raworth, who is one of the leading proponents of the circular economy. She says, "We've got unprecedented opportunities for making it happen because 20th century centralized technologies concentrated wealth, knowledge, and power in few hands." And what she means by the circular economy is that we will find ways to turn the waste from one urban process into food for the next. Look, it even says biological materials. Regenerate them. And if you haven't caught it, they are, Seattle, I think, has started the first human body compost facility. So you can get compost, and it's made of dead humans. Doesn't sound like a great idea. Sounds very demonic as well. Sounds like it has no respect for life. The Internet of Things literally means that each piece and component of each thing out there in the world, including living things, will be tracked and controlled digitally. So apply that to every appliance in your home, all the way down to your clothing and your food. There's companies out there trying to be the dominant company on tracing every part of every item. So if you have clothing that's 60% cotton and 40% rayon, I'm not joking, there's companies out there that will track the rayon and the cotton in your garment. This is the Internet of Things. This is the circular economy. You don't own anything. They are trying to make the entire globe and all the people in it be nodes on their new internet so that we may all function like one brain. So a lot of people are going to end up being out of work if this circular economy goes forward. Just imagine this entire new paradigm where people aren't really people. They're just part of the Internet of Things. And if you can be one of the programmers of the Internet of Things. You will be like a god. And the race is on. Optogenetics is a method for controlling a neuron's activity using light and genetic engineering. Genetic engineering is a process where scientists change the information in the genetic code of a living thing. In optogenetic studies, scientists take the genetic code of the neurons they want to study, and they add a new piece of code into it. The new code allows these neurons to make special proteins called opsins, which respond to light. Opsins occur naturally and were first discovered in algae, which use these proteins to help them move toward the light. But how does the opsin get into the neuron? Well, this requires some specialized laboratory techniques. And to get the opsin into the neuron of a mouse, the genetic code for the opsin is carefully inserted into the genetic code for the neuron in the mouse. If this is done correctly, now every neuron in the mouse should have the opsin. Because we understand a lot about the genetic code of the mouse, we can choose where to put the opsin. We can insert the code into a specific type of neuron or into a specific location in the brain. We can choose exactly which neurons we want to control. You can get those opsins into the neurons in the brain on the back of a virus. And they can even use a common virus, such as the one that causes the common cold. It's that easy to do it.
The second component of a Great Reset agenda would ensure that investments advance shared goals such as equality and sustainability, rather than using US, EU, Asia funds, as well as investments from private entities and pension funds to fill cracks in the old system, which they do and will continue to do anyway. We should use them to create a new one that is more resilient, equitable, and sustainable in the long run. This means, for example, building green urban infrastructure and creating incentives for industries to improve their track record on environmental, social, and governance metrics.
In modern monetary theory, it means that if governments need money, they just input more money, quote unquote, into the computer account. Money will become meaningless in modern monetary theory. The blockchain is the method by which they will implement this, and that's why they need 5G technology or higher. It will also offer us a replacement for hard currency and have digital currency as the only option.
This is the fundamental part of what the Great Reset is about. It's about eliminating competition. One, if one were of the conspiratorial bent, might even say that the real purpose of the past few months was to completely shake out the global economy of any of that pesky competition for the few main players who are going to monopolize the global economy. But we're not that conspiratorial here, are we, James?
The third and final priority of the Great Reset agenda is to harness the innovations of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which just so happens to be the name of this guy's book. And that's going to support the public good. During the COVID-19 crisis, companies, universities, and others have joined forces to develop diagnostics, therapeutics, and possible vaccines, establishing testing centers, create mechanisms for tracing infections, and deliver telemedicine. Imagine what could be possible if similar concerted efforts were made in every sector. End quote.
Genetic engineering is reconstructing, rebuilding parts of our DNA, which will enable them to connect people to the Internet of Things.
A team of scientists in Korea and the United States have invented a device that can control neural circuits using a tiny brain implant controlled by a smartphone. Controlled with an elegant and simple user face on a smartphone, neuroscientists can easily trigger any specific combination or precise sequencing of light and drug deliveries in any implanted target animal without need to be physically inside the laboratory. This is nanoscale engineering. Will that combine with the Internet of Things and the blockchain to make us a part of this circular economy, I wonder?
You might say, no way will people get implants. Well, have you heard of CRISPR? There's people doing this willingly. A partner in that is George Church. George Church is one of the scientists that got money with and hung out with Jeffrey Epstein. You can use CRISPR to genetically engineer viruses And you know who facilitated all these relationships, by the way? Is this guy, John Brockman, from edge.org.
The CRISPR method is based on a natural system used by bacteria to protect themselves from infection by viruses. When the bacterium detects the presence of virus DNA, it produces 2 types of short RNA, one of which contains a sequence that matches that of the invading virus. These 2 RNAs form a complex with a protein called Cas9. Cas9 is a nuclease, a type of enzyme that can cut DNA. When the matching sequence, known as a guide RNA, finds its target within the viral genome, the Cas9 cuts the target DNA, disabling the virus. Over the past few years, researchers studying the system realized that it could be engineered to cut not just viral DNA, but any DNA sequence at a precisely chosen location by changing the guide RNA to match the target. And this can be done not just in a test tube, but also within the nucleus of a living cell. Once inside the nucleus, the resulting complex will lock onto a short sequence known as the PAM. The Cas9 will unzip the DNA and match it to its target RNA. If the match is complete, the Cas9 will use 2 tiny molecular scissors to cut the DNA. When this happens, the cell tries to repair the cut, but the repair process is error-prone, leading to mutations that can disable the gene, allowing researchers to understand its function. These mutations are random, but sometimes researchers need to be more precise, for example by replacing a mutant gene with a healthy copy. This can be done by adding another piece of DNA that carries the desired sequence. Once the CRISPR system has made a cut, this DNA template can pair up with the cut ends, recombining and replacing the original sequence with the new version. All this can be done in cultured cells, including stem cells that can give rise to many different cell types. It can also be done in a fertilized egg, allowing the creation of transgenic animals with targeted mutations. And unlike previous methods, CRISPR can be used to target many genes at once, a big advantage for studying complex human diseases that are caused not by a single mutation, but by many genes acting together. These methods are being improved rapidly and will have many applications in basic research, in drug development, in agriculture, and perhaps eventually for treating human patients with genetic disease.
The thing about blockchain is that it requires an enormous amount of energy to work. And which country currently hosts the most crypto servers, for example? It's China. And China is never held to account regarding the climate crisis or green tech, is it? What would produce the energy needed to power this energy hog blockchain? Remember that in the circular economy, a lot of jobs will be lost. Robots will do everything in consult with the Internet of Things. In MMT, modern monetary theory, they say they don't need a backing for the value of money.
But I argue there is a backing for the value of money in that system. And the backing is human energy. Each person will be evaluated for how much energy they can contribute to the circular economy. And that is our whole worth. They will give us an income, which will be energy credits, basically, based on how much energy we put back into the system. You see, and in that way, in their nutso minds, everything will be in perfect balance. If I, Polly, do X amount of work in a day that benefits the system, I, Polly, will be rewarded with the same amount of credits back, which I can spend into the system by eating food, or heating my home, or traveling from point A to point B. It's impossible to get ahead in such a system. But that's what they want. Complete socialism, everybody exactly the same. You see, this is a scene from a show called Black Mirror. The episode name is 15 Million Merits. It is so depressing, but I think it's very close to the world they envision. You notice they're all sitting here pedaling stationary bikes. That's to earn their energy credits. And they're watching stupid video game / shows of which they have very limited choice on those screens there. And what they spend their energy credits on are the food out of the vending machines, which they comment is grown in a lab. And they also spend it on turning off commercials, because they'll bombard them with commercials on their screens, and they spend energy credits to not have to be subject to the commercials, because the commercials are full of sex and degeneracy, like, pornography, etc. I'm sure people look at this and they say, no way will we ever let this happen. Well, they've already thought of the way to ease you into that, and that is through virtual and augmented reality. 2019, the year virtual reality gets real. As I look to the future and the arrival of 5G, my hopes for virtual reality become even brighter. Some of virtual reality's outstanding obstacles to growth will be overcome. The low latency, super fast speeds, and stable connections that 5G brings will herald a new era of virtual reality. Experiences will be more accessible, more reliable, and ultimately more immersive. Here's an example of a virtual reality world that already exists and many of you may have heard of. Second Life. This is a totally immersive world where you can have your own business, your own family, your own home. You can design your own clothes, you can make friends, you can earn money. People lose their whole real lives to Second Life. I recommend you Google it. Look it up on YouTube too and see testimonials from people. It's really scary. The virtual reality world will be constructed completely by them. And it will very closely resemble how you would move through the real 3D world, because they will have constant real-time inputs from this, the Internet of Things. If you think I am exaggerating, let me play for you outtakes from the World Economic Forum's own video on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Listen to what she's saying.
With the ability to visualize brain activity, for example, through a simple consumer-based EEG device, it gives us access to ourselves in ways that we've never before thought possible. It unlocks the black box that is the brain and enables us to really, truly be able to realize an identity that is aspirational. One of the things that I think is so essential to free and open societies is freedom of thought. And up until now, the conversation we've been having is around freedom of speech. Once we can access people's thoughts and access people's emotion, we have to create a space that enables people to think freely, to think divergent thoughts, to think creative thoughts. And in a society where people fear having those thoughts, the likelihood of being able to enjoy progress is significantly diminished.
They want to unlock the black box that is the brain and then create spaces for us in which we can be creative. We have that space already. What she really means is they want to take it away from us so that they can decide which parts we're allowed to have back for a fee, under their strict control.
What happened to the American dream? It came true. You're looking at it.
Though your heart is aching, smile, even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by if you smile through your fear and sorrow.
It's a joke.
Smile,
It's all a joke.
and maybe tomorrow